So, being on a heart healthy diet, it sure changes the way you celebrate. Um, I've picked out a couple of recipes from this holiday issue of Bon Appetit. And yes, it's the December 25 to January 26 issue. And I'm going to miss it when my subscription's up. But let's go ahead here and hit a couple of recipes that I wanted to share with you. The jig was up. The year our Christmas presents were held hostage by a frosted over trunk of my parents' car. A rare occurrence for typically mild Tennessee winters. At 9 years old, I was the youngest and already suspicious, but Santa's frozen gifts confirmed it. The holiday no longer hinged on his arrival. From then on, our Christmas Eve ritual took a new form: fancy dinner, followed by a midnight mass, then home for presents before traipsing to bed. But before any unwrapping could begin, my mother would dash to the kitchen to whip up a batch of hot chocolate. She used Nesquik, a chocolatey powder containing, among other things, a whisper of cinnamon. Eventually, my siblings and I would decline the cocoa, opting to pour ourselves a cocktail instead, but the memory of those flavors is still with me. Come to think of it, these milky, sweet, warmly spiced cookies would taste as good as with a whiskey on the rocks as they would with a warm glass of milk. Joe Sevier. Now this is on page, what page is that? Donna, get it down there. Is that 54? It's either 54 or, yeah, I think it's 54. Hot chocolate cookies. Now let's go with what it says. Makes about 18. 1 cup of 125 grams of all-purpose flour. A half a cup, 43 grams, Dutch processed cocoa powder. 1/4 cup, 32 grams of cornstarch. 2 tablespoons of non-fat dry milk powder. 1 teaspoon baking powder. A half a teaspoon ground cinnamon. 1/4 teaspoon baking soda. 1 cup packed 200-gram dark brown sugar. 1/2 cup 1 stick unsalted butter at room temperature. 1 teaspoon diamond crystal or 1/2 teaspoon of Morton kosher salt. 2 large eggs, 2 teaspoon vanilla extract, 4 ounces of high quality milk chocolate, 35% to 45% cacao, coarsely chopped, and 3 tablespoons or more of marshmallow cream. Now, let's do the directions. Place racks in upper and lower thirds of the oven. Preheat to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Sift flour, cocoa powder, cornstarch, milk powder, baking powder, cinnamon, and baking soda into a medium bowl. Using an electric mixer on medium-high speed, beat brown sugar, butter, and salt in a large bowl until light and fluffy, about 3 minutes. Add eggs one at a time, beating after each addition until combined before adding the next. Beat in vanilla, reduce the speed to low, and add half of dry ingredients. Beat until just combined, add remaining dry ingredients, and beat until no streaks remain. Add chocolate gently, fold in a rubber spatula just until evenly distributed. Using a number 40 cookie scoop, that's about 2 tablespoons, portion out 12 cookies. Dough will be very sticky. Dividing between 2 parchment-lined baking sheets and spacing at 2 inches apart, dollop about 1/2 teaspoon marshmallow cream onto each cookie. Smooth and swirl into and over the dough as desired. Bake your cookies rotating baking sheets top to bottom and front to back, halfway through until spread out and slightly puffed. 10 to 12 minutes. Remove from the oven for perfectly round cookies, working quickly one at a time. Place an inverted glass or a round cutter with a diameter slightly larger than the cookies or over or around and scoot in a circular motion to smooth the edges. Let your cookies cool on baking sheets using a spatula transferred to a wire rack. Repeat baking process with remaining dough and marshmallow cream to make about 6 more cookies. Do ahead. Cookies can be baked 3 days ahead. Store in an airtight at room temperature. Joe says, my favorite chocolate snacking and these cookies is about the 38% milk chocolate bar from Lake Champion, $6 for a 3-ounce bar. LakeChampionChocolates.com. A powerful ground cinnamon is also ideal, such as Frontier Co-op Cortigi, which is $6 at FrontierCoop.com, or Burlap and Barrel Royal Cinnamon, $10 at burlapandbarrel.com. And they do have a baker's note. Don't just dollop the marshmallow cream, swirl it. A dollop will sit on top of the cookie without moving, while swirling it will pull a bit of the batter into the cream, creating streaks that will make it look like marshmallow melting into a mug of hot chocolate. And then they provide a picture of what it should look like on the other page. Okay, and then the next recipe I want to share with you is on page 62. And it's called Bake the Cover, Peppermint Black and White Cookies. And yes, these are the cookies from the cover of the book. I didn't grow up in a baking household. As an Asian immigrant, lore goes, our oven and dishwasher, while we're at it, was indeed used primarily for storage. That isn't to say that we didn't love baked goods. One of my favorite growing up was classic black and white cookie found in many New York City bakeries and Jewish delis. It was a real treat to pick one up after a museum or gallery trip with my mom. She'd usually go for a date Ruglish, while I'd beeline to the giant graphic treats, nibbling my way across each flavor and down, being sure to get a balanced mix of both vanilla and chocolate. My preference for a soft, cakey cookie can probably be traced back to my love for these. This cookie is a riff on the extra large New York classic, shrunk down to the size of a chubby chocolate chip cookie, featuring refreshing peppermint extract, when in doubt, be stingy, and a sprinkle of festive crushed candy canes. Hana Asbrink. Here's a baker's note right off. For smoothest, shiniest application, a thick glaze works best. Loose enough to spread, but stiff enough to stand on its own. Add more water or corn syrup at the end if needed to get it to the right consistency. Glazing the white sides first gives them enough time to set before starting on the chocolate. Now this is going to make about 16 cookies. And we start with what you need for your cookies. 1 cup, which is 125 grams of all-purpose flour, a half a teaspoon baking powder, a half a teaspoon diamond crystal, or 1/4 teaspoon Morton kosher salt, 1/2 cup 100-gram granulated sugar, 6 tablespoons unsalted butter room temperature, 1 large egg yolk, 1/3 cup sour cream, 1/4 teaspoon peppermint extract. Now here's how you glaze, and then we're going to move on to assembly. 2 full-size candy canes, 3 cups, 330 grams powdered sugar, 1/4 teaspoon peppermint extract, 3 tablespoons or more light corn syrup divided, 1/4 cup Dutch processed cocoa powder such as Guitar de Coco Rogue. Cookies. Place a rack in the middle of the oven. Preheat to 350. Whisk flour, baking powder, and salt in a small bowl to combine. Using an electric mixer on medium-high speed, beat your granulated sugar and butter in a large bowl until light and fluffy. That's about 2 minutes. Add your egg yolk. Beat to combine. Add sour cream and peppermint extract. Beat again to combine. Add dry ingredients, reduce mixture to speed to low, and beat until well combined. Using a rubber spatula, mix until no dry streaks on flour remain. Using a number 40 cookie scoop, about 2 tablespoons, portion out your dough, dividing between 2 baking sheets lined with silicone baking mats for the smoothest bottoms, or the parchment paper, spacing about 2 inches apart, up to 8 per baking sheet. Working with 1 baking sheet at a time, bake cookies until puff, matte on top, and golden underneath, 14 to 16 minutes. Check after 12 minutes if parchment. Let cool on baking sheets 5 minutes. Carefully transfer to a wire rack. Let cool separately, or completely, Go ahead, or to do ahead. I don't have my glasses on and it shows. Cookies can be baked 1 day ahead. Store airtight at room temperature. Glaze and assembly. Place candy canes in a resealable plastic bag. Seal in lightly crushed candy canes into small pieces with a rolling pin or skillet. Try not to overdo it or you'll end up with powder. Set aside. Stir your powdered sugar, peppermint extract, 2 tablespoons, corn syrup, and 2 tablespoons water in a small bowl until smooth. Glaze should be very thick but fluid. Add more water. 1 teaspoon at a time, up to 1 tablespoon to loosen, or drizzle in more corn syrup as needed to thicken. Pour half of the glaze into another small bowl. Add cocoa powder, remaining 1 tablespoon corn syrup, and 1 tablespoon water. Stir, adding more water, 1 teaspoon at a time if needed, until cocoa powder is dissolved and glaze is smooth and thick. Turn cookies over using a small offset spatula. Spread 1/2 of each cookie with about a 1/2 teaspoon white glaze. Repeat with chocolate glaze on an empty half of each cookie. Immediately lightly sprinkle 1 side of each cookie with reserved crushed candy canes. Alternate between white and chocolate glaze if desired. Let cookies sit at room temperature until glaze is no longer wet to the touch. 30 to 45 minutes. Do ahead. Cookies can be made 12 hours ahead. Store in airtight container at room temperature. And it says over here, Hannah says an offset spatula might feel like an overly chefy restaurant utensil, but its function is multi-faceted at home. I use it to smooth out anything that needs leveling, like the glaze on these cookies, as a gentle fork lift for prying things off a baking sheet, or even help scrape out the last of the mayo in the jar. Again, that was the peppermint black and white cookies, which is featured on the cover. Thank you for tuning in for these 2 recipes. Now we'll get back to the stories.